and welcome back to Indieventure EXTRA, our bonus series where we interview key members of the games industry. My guests today make up the indie game studio Kaizen Game Works, developers of Indieventure favourite Paradise Killer, the open-world detective game about dead gods and demons set on a fantastical tropical island. In anticipation of their upcoming title, the mascot management RPG Promise Mascot Agency, I'm delighted to have Kaizen on the pod to discuss both projects in more detail. Please welcome Technical Director Phil Crabtree.
Hello.
Art Director Rachel Noy.
Hello.
And Game Director Oli Clarke Smith.
Hello.
Thank you so much for being on the pod. I'm very, very excited to dig into both games. But before we dive into that properly, this week at the time of recording, you've just released a public demo for Promise Mascot Agency on both PC and console. I know you've been working on this game for a long time, and now it's in the hands of the general gaming public, as it were. How are you all feeling now that it's out there, people are playing it, and how has reception been so far?
One article called it Game of the Year contender. So, like,
That's a good sign.
The rest of the industry could just pack up. We're done. It's gone really well. It's been magic seeing people's reaction to it, and we set up like threads on Reddit and Steam to like track bugs and feedback and stuff, worried that, putting this thing out there was going to generate a load of like issues, and like so little has come in. So like on one level, it's great that people are having very few technical issues with it. And then we've had just lots of wonderful feedback about it.
Brilliant. I'm really happy that people are responding well to it. I played the demo over the weekend. I had quite a bad cold actually. So playing the game with a slight fever was maybe the optimal way of experiencing it, I think. I did really enjoy it.
Oh, amazing.
Do you find that, because you did an early demo for Paradise Killer too, I think I remember. How do you feel releasing a demo? Do you think it's like really important these days? Do you find it's better for things like for bugs, or like what do you think the benefits are to releasing an early demo, especially for an indie?
I mean, it's terrifying, right? Releasing a demo, it is worrying because you've got to do so much work, especially in a game like ours, which is open world and it's more freeform. You can't just release one level. You've got to release a big chunk of an entire game and then kind of close it off. And it is worrying because that means so much polishing, getting stuff right. And yeah, you're worried about all the bugs that will come in. But people do sort of expect it now, especially with the rise of things like Steam Next Fest, which wasn't around when we did the demo for Paradise Killer, but now it's so common. People expect it. And I think if you do put out a demo, it communicates you've got trust in what you're doing as well. And for a game like ours, which is a little bit difficult to explain, saying, well, if you're not quite sure what this game is, play it and see if you enjoy it. That's the best thing we can do. Like, here it is, go nuts, enjoy. So it's really, really valuable to us, really important. But it is, as an indie, another thing you've got to fit into your schedule. And so it's a lot of work, but rewarding, and it's a nice dry run as well because there's so many things you have to go on and press the button on and make happen, and be able to do it for a demo. It's kind of a warm up for the main release is good.
No, I've never thought of it that way, but that makes a lot of sense. Before we talk more about the games that you've made, I'd love to just ask, what are the, I guess, games that the three of you would consider to be your core texts? So games that maybe got you into video games in the first place, or one or two games that made you think this is what I want to do for a living. I'm aware I'm dropping this question on you with no prep whatsoever. Rachel, maybe you'd like to go first.
My mind's gone blank. There's so many. For me, like maybe not the kind of game that got me into making games, but some of my favorite games are the Soda series and the Akiza series. I just love like characters. I love like how games kind of portray characters and you really get to know like them over like 15 hours or whatever, as opposed to like 2 hours in a movie and everything. And as for games that got me into games, I was actually quite a like fan of RTS games, so like Civilization, like Dawn of War, Command and Conquer, all of that kind of thing. That was kind of like the thing I started with. StarCraft. I was really into StarCraft when I was a kid, like Diablo and all that kind of stuff. And then as a bit older, I've kind of moved over to a lot more kind of narrative games. And, all kinds of ones, really.
Interesting. What about yourself, Ollie?
Well, I think the game I think about every day is Resident Evil 4. the original 2005 release. And
my man, yep. I'm with you on that one.
and that game is in my head every day because it was such a defining experience. Like, I think it is a perfect video game, and I think that there's a lot of lessons from that game that haven't been taken on board by other people yet. Like, that game still does things that 20 years later other games fail to do, and so I think about that game a lot. And then, depending on what we're currently working on, like the core text changes, and but something that really did affect me was Metal Gear 1 or Metal Gear Solid 1 on the PS1, because I think that defined my view on kind of story and characters and tone in games, where it takes itself deathly seriously, but it also has a joke. Like, it's very self-aware, and it's fine having, characters that seem, in Peace Walker, it's set during the Cold War, and the main bad guy is called Hot Coldman. And like that, no other game would do that. And like that is like, and it plays it so straight. And it just creates this wonderful atmosphere and like the freedom of expression that the player has within those games, because everyone thinks about like the narrative of those games, but you can turn any one of those games into performance art by just exploiting the mechanics and learning the systems. And all of the designers that work on those games are geniuses. And so I think like that, not necessarily the cinematic aspirations that it had, but certainly like the tone and gameplay, like agency, defines what I look for.
With your Resident Evil 4 obsession, does that mean that you were responsible for that conversation about Resident Evil 4 in Paradise Killer? Because I think about that conversation a lot. That tracks. Phil, what about yourself?
So I think the one that really made me start to fall in love with games is probably Monkey Island. It was one of the LucasArts games. I'm going to say Monkey Island. And just playing that through with the family, sort of realizing what games could be. And at the time, I was pretty young. So it felt like you can do anything in that game, because it was just, all the verbs you can mix and match, but it felt limitless. And I really liked that. And so I think that's probably when I really started properly getting into them. But for sort of narrative style games, I'd say the first one that really got me was probably Catherine, and then the Persona 4 series. Those Catherine especially got me in a big way. I was playing those damn puzzles for way too late. Been playing them early hours of the morning. And yeah, the friendships you build up in Persona 4 just really hit. And it's like, I'd seen bits of that in other games. Like, there's plenty of games where you do develop a connection, but in that game, it really felt like I've made friends, and I was sad that the game ended because you wouldn't see any more of them. So I like to think of that. I mean, I don't do much of the writing in our games, but when characters are being developed and when I'm reading them, so do I feel that same connection? And that's what I tried to gauge it on.
Nice. Well, you can definitely see the thread between all of these games and the ones you've ended up making. Although I think I'm probably highly anticipating the Kaizen Game Works RTS that I assume is waiting in the wings at some point.
I think that would be an RTS unlike any other.
I can only imagine. So Kaizen was founded in 2018 by Phil and also yourself, Oli. What motivated its creation, and what compelled you both to start an indie game studio?
We have known each other now for a lot of years, 25 years.
Oh, damn, okay.
And we used to be in a band together. We used to hang out and play Dreamcast and skateboard together. And, we had different lives. And, like uni was a big branching point where, we both did our own stuff. But I went straight into the games industry. And then years later, Phil came to the industry. And we released a game on iOS back in 2011 and called Wonton 51, which is no longer available. And we enjoyed doing that, just like something in our spare time. And then as careers went on and as we both approached 40, it was kind of this feeling that we want to do our own thing. We want to work together again, and we want to do our own thing because Phil worked in mobile and I worked in AAA narrative, and both of those fields are very much you don't necessarily get to put a lot of yourself into a game. It's what either with mobile stuff, it's what either the market and the metrics demand, or the client demands. And then on the narrative side, it was very much what the director demands. And so we wanted to do our own thing, and we took our savings and I'd like to say set fire to them, but I don't think it actually worked out like that. I think it actually worked out all right, and we made a game that we wanted to make, and it was that desire to not work for the man anymore and to do something that we would be proud of, that communicates something about us. And we both felt the time to do it before it's too late, as it were. And so we took the plunge. I think Phil was a little less ready than I was, but I was getting to a point on a project where I did not want to be in that office anymore. And we talked about it, and we said, yeah, well, maybe we do it in a few months to a year. And then one day I said, we are doing it soon. I'm quitting in the next couple of weeks. Strap in.
Trying to go into, basically.
Yeah. It really was. I liked my job at the time. I was in a really good studio. Lots of people I really liked. But that urge to do something was there, and it was nice talking about in theory. But when I got the message of, right, my notice has gone in, I think something switched then for me from being like, okay, this is happening. And immediately I went from being unsure about it to going, well, I better write my notice tonight then, get that put in. I went on holiday for 2 weeks, came back, and then that was it. Out.
That is brave, but you almost do need someone sometimes to just be like, look, I'm doing it. I'm ripping the bandage off.
No, never.
It's not a journey I'd want to do on my own at all. I can't imagine how I would make a game without, everyone else in Kaizen. It's on my own. I didn't need it. But when Oli was like, right, we're doing this. Just got to jump over it. And, my wife was super supportive as well. She runs her own business, so she knows what it's like. And it was just, let's do it. Let's see what we can make. What's the worst thing that could possibly happen?
Rachel, I know you were heavily involved in the development of Paradise Killer, but you joined the team slightly later on. What compelled you to join the team?
I think, I'd kind of worked on Paradise Killer a lot. Anyway, me and Oli are partners, so but I was helping a lot on Paradise Killer in the evenings and everything. But I was working in a mix of AAA and indie as well. So I kind of always wanted to be involved, but just like it wasn't possible. Like someone had to bring in the money. So I was earning the money basically, and then luckily, kind of Paradise Killer did all right and well enough to bring me on. Well, we managed to get funding for this game, and and managed to bring me on. So I was kind of waiting in the wings, just seeing if it was going to go well or not. And luckily they did want to hire me off for Paradise Killer, so that was really nice.
You mentioned that Phil and Oli, you're in a band. What was your band called? Just out of curiosity.
The Embryonic Adults.
Love that.
We were a hardcore punk band, and which is secret code for play badly, shout loudly. And we grew up in Derby, which had a really good UK DIY punk scene. Which is completely faded away now. But we were incredibly lucky to grow up right in the heart of that scene and kind of meet a lot of bands that were, say, like DIY and learning about, doing your own thing, and no one is going to make it for you. You need to make it yourself, and kind of take that on. So we formed a band, and then I got into doing promotion and zines and stuff like that. And I only got into games because I was looking for a job during the day that would fund me doing, like, trying to be a band promoter or a record label during the evening. And the job I got was testing video games, and then punk could go away. We didn't need that anymore.
None of that surprises me. You were all very cool when you were younger, doing skateboarding tricks and in a punk band. It doesn't surprise me that
you've ended up with. It's a good job there was no videos of it.
No, let's say tricks. There's no evidence. So yeah, that's my headcanon now. Moving on to Paradise Killer. I'm an enormous Paradise Killer sicko.
Thank you very much.
And I devoured it when it first came out, and it has stuck with me in the years since I've played it. So we're approaching the game's 5th anniversary, which scared me a little when I realised that. Looking back on it after 5 years, how do you all feel when you revisit it now? Are there any moments that you're particularly proud of, or elements that you feel different about half a decade on?
I sure do wish that we got some budget for a text editor, because there are so many typos and grammatical mistakes that there's
I was going to say that as well.
too many. I would really like to fix that, and I like we keep chatting about doing the Paradise Killer DX version, and we will get that fixed. In terms of how I feel about it 5 years on, I struggle to believe that it actually happened and people played it, and that people still remember it and care about it. But I think that is a testament to having people believe in us enough to allow us to do our own thing. You know, like both our partners helped fund giving up work to be able to do this. Rachel helped on the game. Amy helped on the game as well, Phil's wife. And then our friends at Fellow Traveller who published it. Like, it was amazing going from a part of the industry where the publisher is on your ass at all times, to the indie industry where they get you some money and then they want to see it every now and then, but otherwise what you do with it is up to you. And then feeling like the limiters had come off and we could just do what we want. And I think that's what makes the game, if I'm allowed to say it, special, because we thought it was going to be a one and done thing, that we would make this game, 5 people would buy it, and then we'd go and get jobs again. It helped to not worry about that, especially with it coming out the time that it came out, like COVID time, you know, an awful time for the world, but a great time to be releasing a video game. And I don't know if we've had that attitude now because of how awful the industry is at the moment. But there's things I'd like to change. I'd completely like to rip the trials out at the end of the game and redo them with some new mechanics and stuff. I think that's the part of the game that is the weakest. And I think we could do something really special with those given enough time, but I don't know what that would be yet. So that's my only regret with it, is that I'm happy with the ending and how it plays out, but I know some people felt let down by it, and I would like us to have another run at it, because we tried to do some interesting experimental stuff with the narrative systems in the game. And I think 90% of the game really succeeded on that. And then that last 10%, I think succeeded, but not as well as the rest of it did. And I think there's something with a bit of time that we could fix.
I love the thought of you doing a Paradise Killer DX, and the only difference is that there's some spelling mistakes changed, by the way. That would be so funny.
You would not believe how many angry messages we got about grammar. I didn't know.
Yeah. Boy, howdy, did I learn a lot.
I honestly don't think I picked up on any of them, which is probably why I'm not a games journalist anymore.
I think mine, we're going to say, be the grammar. And also I did some really quick, like, character art. I did like some of the top ups for some of the stuff we didn't have time or money to get from our main artist, Gigalithic, and it looks rough. So every time I look at it, I cringe, because it was like I did it like on my iPad on the sofa one evening, and I just really would have loved to do it again. Like, I drew Bear-chan in an evening, and she looks rough, but oh well, it's all rough and ready. I feel part of it, and it's part of the charm, right?
The whole game is supposed to be, the whole thing was supposed to be DIY. You know, we're not trying to make, with our games, we're not trying to make something perfect. We're trying to make what we can make. And so some of our game looks, you know, really professional, some of it does not. And, you know, I'm not calling your work out on that. I'm like talking about like a lot of the environment stuff and, you know, some of the rougher edges of the game mechanics and stuff. But I think that's what gives it the charm.
I think for me, I'm really, really proud of it. When I look back on it now, it's sort of, as Oli said, it's sort of unbelievable we did it, especially with such, you know, limited resources. It's came out, and it's really nice to have been part of something that people really attach to. I used to work in mobile games, and people can love mobile games, but they don't attach themselves to it. And when we started out, I think like any indie developer, they start out and they've got these dreams like, wouldn't it be nice if we get to do a physical? Wouldn't it be nice if we get to put out a soundtrack? Or wouldn't it be nice if we get and all these things have happened. And I think you can start to take it for granted a little bit, but it is amazing that those things are there. And all these things that I never thought would happen. And I'm super, super happy with it. There are things I probably would change, like Oli said, the trials, and there's a few little glitches and stuff, but by and large, I think if we had more money to make the game, I don't know if it would have made it any better. If we had more time, I don't know if it would have been any better. I think it's a product of what we had what we could do and all the decisions we put together to make that. And I'm, overwhelmingly proud of it. I think initially I'd never released a game that got so much direct attention and never received so much, because obviously you're normally part of the studio. And that to me is a bit odd because I'm quite introvert. But as time goes on and you realize people just want to appreciate it, and just so thankful for that.
It's so funny when you talk to people about things they've made and they're like, oh, I hate this bit. And it's like, oh, I thought it was really good. I like the trials. Is there anything that players really hooked onto that you were surprised by? Or alternatively, anything that you thought would be a much bigger deal that basically went overlooked in the game?
So the whole conceit with the game is that you can find all the clues and testimony, speak to the suspects in any order, rather than having to jump through a linear set of narrative hoops like you would do in a like a Phoenix Wright or something. And we put all this system in and put all this freedom in, but assumed that no one would actually kind of utilize it. We just assumed that people would find everything and would get 100% completion on it each run. But then in one of the best reviews, the reviewer found that they got to the end of the trials and didn't get the result that they wanted in the trials, and then went back and found some evidence that they'd missed, which opened up a whole new plot line, and then they could go and present their argument better in the trial. And so that for me was a big surprise, that something that we put so much effort into, expecting it either to be not be used, or by a very small percentage of people engage with it in that way, to see more and more people engage with it like that was a big surprise. It just felt validated that what we've made was mysterious enough and engaging enough for people to have different reactions and playthroughs and different perceptions of what the truth is. And that was just a big worry, that we want people to play it like this, but you can never guarantee what a player is going to do.
I was surprised by how deep people got into the lore. And I think that's just because you assume, right, you're putting out the game, people are going to play it, they're going to enjoy it, and then it's going to go. But people love the lore, and it's a surprise in the nicest way, because it's there. Nolly did such a great job of making it. But you do wonder, are people going to engage with it? And the fact they have is wonderful.
I just loved how much people hated Yuri, because I hated them as well. So I was I felt really vindicated, and I was doing the social media, and I loved chatting to people about how much Yuri sucks. So
that's so funny.
That was good. That was a nice surprise for me.
I love that. You mentioned before that the game came out in September 2020. It came out really deep in the pandemic. And I think one of the reasons why I personally connected so much to Paradise Killer at the time is because it sort of gave me that summer holiday that I was denied that year. You've been able to visit this island and explore it. How was it to wrap up and then release a game during that period, deep in 2020?
So in some ways, this sounds terrible, but in some ways COVID helped us because it took away all distractions. We couldn't go out and do stuff. So our focus went on the game. But obviously that's not entirely healthy. But it definitely helped that there was an audience there and people like you who wanted to get this escape. And the game had been designed as escape right from the start, mostly for sort of just to counteract the terrible parts of the world. You could have this place to escape to. And obviously with COVID coming along, it sort of made that even more desirable. But releasing during COVID, I mean, it's difficult to say because we had the luxury of working from home. So, our lives could carry on quite well. I feel like I should say, there was this terrible thing about it, but it wasn't that bad going through COVID for me. It was happening with a really bad part of my personal life as well, which meant the game, sort of just having that game and having releasing it was my savior. That's what got me through that time. So all that mixed together, I find it hard to put into words what that all was, because it was terrible and great all at the same time. So yeah, that's a very confusing answer too. I don't really know. It's I'm glad people could connect to it. It was, as with everything else, it came out. Paradise Killer was a product of what we had when we made it, and maybe that was an influence on it.
Interesting. So if we could move on to Promise Mascot Agency, I was going to write a short summary of what the game is, but I would maybe like you to describe it yourselves for anyone who doesn't know. I'd be curious of how you would describe Promise Mascot Agency?
Promise Mascot Agency is an open world mascot management crime drama. It is a kind of mascot management RPG. You play as a character called Michizane, a Yakuza lieutenant who messed up real bad during a big brokering of an alliance between different Yakuza families, and he lost 12 billion yen. He is supposed to be dead, but his matriarch needs him to do one last job to try and save his family, and exiles him to a cursed town on the coast of Kyushu in Japan to resurrect a bankrupt mascot agency. In our world, mascots are living creatures instead of people in suits, and they live alongside humans and have lots of them have all sorts of different jobs and roles in life, but a lot of them do mascot events. And so you need to go and reopen the mascot agency. You meet your assistant manager, Pinky, who is a mascot herself, and she's going to guide you through this new world that Michi finds himself in. And you need to explore the town, recruit mascots, send them out on jobs, manage the agency, help the mascots find their own personal life satisfaction and meaning, help them deal with their problems, and work with the NPCs in town, the townsfolk, to revitalize the town so that there's some actual money in the town to pay for your mascots. And while doing all of that, solve the conspiracy behind your exile, solve the mystery as to what happened, how you got exiled, and what is going on in the underworld of Japan.
I love that. I genuinely think some of my favorite indie games are ones that you just can't summarize in less than like 5 words. I just think it's brilliant. Like, it's the elevator pitch where you've got to go 80 floors, and I just think it's absolutely fantastic.
Well, it's good in some ways because it means you get a description like that. But then in other ways, where people are browsing your Steam page and it isn't 5 words, it's a nightmare, and people don't understand what the game is, and you can't sell it to people. So it's a difficult line to tread.
We had real issues with like trying to explain it, haven't we? And in our last demo kind of release trailer, we just kind of gave up. So we're like, right, we just going to show loads of stuff we want to show, and then just repeat the words mascot management crime drama like over and over again, because it's just like, you know, we know that we're not going to be able to explain everything, and no matter what we say, someone's going to be like, I don't understand, like, what is this is weird. And it's just like, well, you can't beat him joining, let's just go with it.
And a lot of the game, like, it is obviously a narrative game, the character's important, the management's important, but vibes are really important as well. So putting out a trailer that is pure vibes, that is sort of selling what it is as well. Like, people want to know what's the gameplay hook. And when you're a platformer, it's very easy to show that. People see platforms, they know how it plays. We don't have that. You see people driving around a truck, and it's hard to really explain what that is, but that's really important, but also a tiny bit of the game in terms of the overall story. So yeah, it is definitely a challenge to market a game that is so big, made by so few people.
Where did the idea for this come from? Like, did it arrive fully formed, or was it totally different when you started designing it?
The original pitch was from Rach, and it was for a the Kairosoft games, like Game Dev Story.
Oh, yeah.
It was originally going to be like that. Your original pitch was a 2D mascot management simulation, but we were concerned that, those games do very well for that studio, and they managed to, because they've gotten into a really good cadence of using same engine, same mechanics, and they're churning them out. And we were worried about being able to make this a viable company by just doing something small like that. And also, when you enter that kind of arena, like the 2D like simulation side on PC is incredibly difficult to break into, and people on there require an awful lot of game and mechanics, and that was not something that we could break into. And so we wanted to mix it up by giving it some kind of, we've done open world with Paradise Killer, the narrative, and so we wanted to do open world narrative. And what happened with the Yakuza element is that we had to get a pitch deck done to start pitching it, and it hadn't got any story. So I just put in, Yakuza man is exiled to this town. It wasn't even exile. Like, a Yakuza guy has to run a mascot agency because of some mistake, and you were not happy about that at all.
No. Well, it's because when someone says that, I'm a real big fan of the Yakuza games. And then to me, I was really concerned that people would say, oh, Yakuza ripoff, because they've done it so well. Like, I think I was really scared because you're going up against like my favorite game pretty much of all time. And I was just thinking, how are we going to not that we'd compete, but you know what I mean? It's just like that natural comparison's always there. But then when I got to start like thinking about it, I was worrying about how, because like mascots are usually quite cute, right? And I know that that's not us as a studio. We don't really, like we always do grotesques, like in kind of horror leaning kind of stuff. And I was thinking, how on earth do we get this kind of darkness in with the funniness? And then when I thought about it, and then you kind of got my confidence in, like when you're like, oh, we can do this, it's fine. You know, Oli, as we talked about, Oli can talk people into a lot of things. Then it was all good, and they were like, right, let's do it, let's go. And then luckily, yeah, like you say, we pitched it before Paradise Killer came out. We didn't know how Paradise Killer was going to do, and we got it signed before Paradise Killer came out.
Oh, right.
The day before, I think.
Wow.
Oh, right. Yeah, I know it was a mad time. Barely remember it now. It was so, like, crazy. So, yeah, it was kind of a weird kind of, I don't know how to explain.
Yeah, which is because I remember the conversation was like, fine, we have to put something in this pitch deck.
Yeah.
So it's got to go out the door today. We'll change the story later. And then it stuck because once we got this signed, we shipped Paradise Killer, and then Rach and I were on holiday, and then we got an email from Phil saying, Kowloon, the people that funded Promise Mascot Agency, they emailed us and said, Ikumi Nakamura wants to work with you guys. Would you like to work with her? We were like, well, of course.
I nearly died. I nearly died of shock. And then
I'm not surprised.
and at that point, we had nothing to send other than this like concept of Yakuza man running a mascot agency. And so we had to send something for her to get started. So like the concept for the game of mascot management, but with a Yakuza lieutenant, just that's like a number of things made it stick. And at that point it stuck, and now here we are.
And then when we started running with it, it was really, really fun. So I'm glad that we didn't let my doubts talk us out of it, because I don't think that would have ever held up in a boardroom, probably.
No.
I don't know, maybe it did because Kowloon signed it, so they obviously saw something fun in it. But I think we did turn a lot of people off with that idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lucky we found the right partners, I guess.
Well, they are not boardroom people. Like they've been so good to work with. They have the shortest contract in the world, the quickest turnaround time on anything, and so they liked it. We were an unproven team, so we had to do a demo to get greenlit, which they paid for. So amazing to work with, and they've been our massive champions.
That's great. So I was going to ask later on how Ikumi Nakamura got involved. I didn't realize it was she almost reached out to you and was like, she wants to be involved. So did she just see the pitch deck and was interested?
She had just left Tango at that point, and her agent is the one that contacted us. I don't know too much about this, but she was working with an agent, and I think her agent was putting her in touch with different studios. And because at the same time, she did some character design work for Rainbow Six Siege and Gungrave Gore. So she was working on a bunch of different projects before setting up her current studio. And I think there's just some conversation between her agent and Kowloon. And because quite rightly, Kowloon were concerned about a bunch of Westerners making a game set in Japan. And so, there was always some chat about, well, we need to get some Japanese talent on board with this so that we get things right and make it like so that it has a Japanese voice and speaks correctly and about their culture and so Ikumi, she's got so many experiences because she does a lot of exploration in Japan, and we've ended up working with a lot of Japanese people on this, and because of the way we work, where we just give them we give all the people we work with, including each other, just get very vague outlines for what we need. Okay, this here is what we need. It needs to serve this function in the game. Go. And so we just get a lot of different lived experiences coming through the concepts we got from her and her concept artist, Mai Matari, from our 2D artists, from our musicians. We have a UK musician, but also a musician, Ryo Koike, who has worked on like Dead or Alive, Ninja Gaiden, Resident Evil, and he brought a lot, because our game is like Showa era themed, so like 70s, 80s kind of themed, and and he got that exactly. So when we said to him, we need a track for the shopping street, he knew exactly what that meant. And it meant that we all got all these different influences, and especially from Ikumi and Mai at the start.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it sounds like you put a lot of trust in your collaborators, and clearly it's, paying dividends. You trust that they understand what needs to be done, and you just sort of give them that broad outline, which sounds like it shouldn't be a unique way of working, but it does sound like it, especially in this industry.
I think a lot of people like to control. They like to, oh, this is our vision. You've got it needs to be like this. But actually, if you send something off and it's free reign, you're not limiting people immediately. You're letting people's imagination go wild. And as the game progresses, you do have to sort of clamp down a little bit just to make sure everything's thematically correct. But mostly, people see the game. They suddenly have a vision for the thing they could do in it. And very, very rarely does it turn out badly. I mean, I'm not sure whenever it turns out badly. People want to do good work, and you work with great people, and they do amazing things. And it just adds to the personality of the game.
Yeah, I think sometimes people don't like to work our way, though. So I think it helps that we've been lucky to find people like Inko, like a guitar artist, and Alpha Chromier, or musician. And, they like to work like that. They're really comfortable if you give them a vague idea. But I know that for some people, it's not right or wrong, but that is quite a pressured way to work, because I think some people would prefer to be told what to do. So when we're hiring, we really try and just make sure that that's the way they like to work, because some people, I don't think would enjoy that. But I think I've been really lucky to kind of get people on board. They're like, oh no, I really, that sounds really fun to me. I'm looking to be a bit more creative, and you'd be told what to do. And I think, everyone was saying, that's how you get your personalities in the game break. You just let people go wild and don't say no very often.
I think we take our roles as directors, as game director, tech director, art director, as like gatekeepers rather than directing a lot of the time. Like, it's just not even gatekeepers, but like a judge that people come before us with, here's what we think would be good for the game, here's what we want to do, and we say yes or no, or yes but, and or yes and it means that instead of people sticking to exactly what we want, new stuff opens up all the time. There's been a whole bunch of stuff that's gone into the game that we never thought of, and then it just arrived, and we're like, yeah, cool, we'll make that work.
Oh, that's really interesting. With Promise Mascot Agency being so different, I guess, to Paradise Killer, it's a different genre that you're working within. I'm curious what you all consider a Kaizen game to be now that you're working on your second one. Like, what's the thread that runs between your work so far? And what commonalities, I guess, do you think players can expect to find in your games moving forward as well?
I think there's a lot of the same stuff in this game, Paradise Killer. Like, it's got the same heart. We always say it's got a Kaizen heart. And sometimes, the characters are a big part of that. Like, big characters that are endearing with cool writing, that is very much a Kaizen thing. But focusing on just making things fun and gamey and sort of getting out the player's way rather than directing them, letting players play the game how they want to in a world they can enjoy, and sort of make their own stories up in it a little bit, or at least feel comfortable in the world and feel like they want to explore more. And it's hard to say what a Kaizen game is other than we think it's cool. Like, if we think it's cool, that's a Kaizen game, right? And there's little bits like the demo that's out. There's things we're changing in the demo to make them feel a bit more Kaizen for the main game. There's little things that we're spotting now, and it's like, well, we see like that could be cooler, or someone's got this cool idea and said, yeah, that's more Kaizen. We'll do that. We'll change that. And I think that's what Kaizen is. It's a lot of iteration on a core idea just to make it, I was going to say shine, but that's not right, because we don't focus on polish. We just focus on what we think is cool.
Yeah, Oli always says we can do anything, but not everything. And I think that kind of, like, some of our games are a bit rough and ready, but I don't think we're afraid to try stuff out, at least.
Yeah, I think from my point of view, I have worked on games where we have eschewed kind of traditional game design and been afraid of gamey game design mechanics. But like, I think the feel of our games, which is a very esoteric thing, is largely derived from what I call PS2 hangout games, where they're single player games, but you kind of go into a space and hang out. And it's like Way of the Samurai, the Tenchu games, the Disaster Report games, the Yakuza games, the Persona games. You go in there and you just hang out with the game for a while. And none of those games care about cinematic production values in the same way that like a lot of games do, like something like a Naughty Dog game. They really care about that kind of level of cinematography and polish and sometimes obscuring like kind of gaminess of games in order to do their prestige vision. And that's not what we're about at all. We are, we grew up on Mega Drive, Dreamcast, PS1, PS2, and that's the kind of games that we want to make. So I think people really, my view is that kind of classic game design that was really nailed by the big games of the PS1 and PS2 era, like the Metal Gears, the Resident Evils, the Shadow of the Colossus, that kind of thing, that game design will never die. And no matter what else happens in this industry, gamey single-player games are going to be the thing that keep appearing and that keep people entertained and keep driving new trends. You look at how many Souls-like games there are, and that is because some lunatics were not told no when they made Demon Souls and Dark Souls, and those are gamey video games that aren't trying to do. They look crowd. When I say people aren't trying to do production values, what I'm talking about is like real cinematic, blended animations, amazing framing, all that stuff. It's just, games that let themselves revel in being games.
Broken my brain a bit with the Quantifier PS2 Hangout games. Because it's like, those are games. Like, yeah, absolutely. I'm totally with you on that. I'm stealing that wholesale and never giving you credit for it now. So I suppose this question is kind of linked to what we're talking about. You've spoken in interviews previously about this idea of friction in games and of trusting the player to discover things on their own terms. The example you gave, I think it was in an Edge interview, was about the foot spas in Paradise Killer. So these granted you upgrades and you intentionally never signposted this to players. I was just wondering if this was a design sensibility you've carried over to Promise Mascot Agency, and if so, what kind of friction have you baked into the game intentionally or not this time around?
One of the things that we never do is interrupt your gameplay for pop-up tutorials. And so we have a lot of our simulation systems. They do have some pop-up tutorials where it makes sense, but it's not like, sometimes you'll play a game and it will pop up as soon as you get control, and it will say, do this to move your character or whatever. We never do that. So we just let the player kind of figure things out. And that happens a lot in our simulation. Like we give people a lot of options and signpost to them that those options are there, but not necessarily the full extent to how they could be used. And you did a playthrough, Rach, the other day, and you got into financial trouble in the management simulation part of the game. And you were doing something with the systems that we put in there that I'd never considered doing.
Interesting.
Every time we make a game, we always say we've got to do the Rachel Chaos playthrough because I have like a really weird attention span, and I don't. Yeah, I've come from a different background in games, I guess, from you guys. Like, I just do, I guess, play things a bit differently, and then something always comes out, doesn't it? It's quite funny.
Yeah, and what it showed to me is that the systems work, and that people will find their way through the systems. And this game has been difficult to make in some ways because of it's a more linear story than Paradise Killer, and it's a lot more mechanics heavy. So we need to tell the player what is available to them, otherwise they will have a really bad time. We started off with telling them nothing, giving them nothing, like we did in PK, and then that was a really bad situation, a bad playthrough experience for people. And then we gave them too much in terms of like quest logs and directions, and saying you need to go here and do this. And so we pulled back from that. So now we sit somewhere in the middle of that, and it's trying to find what is like the right level of telegraphing or explanation per mechanic, per part of the game for our intended audience. And there's been a lot of push and pull on that. And there's sometimes, it's easy to think that when you're making a game, you're looking at kind of like the main stuff, the main line through it, the main mechanics that you need the player to engage with, the main story beats you want them to hit. And you get the player to those, and you worry that you've done too much, and that's when the side stuff starts coming in. I think that's one of the Kaizen things, is to put in the side stuff that is off the beaten path, that requires you to go out and find, that we put no direction into. And so the player has that balance of, they've been told enough and pointed in enough directions to be able to engage with the game well, but there's still a load of stuff to go out and discover. And it's been a very tricky, like, back and forth, push and pull to find that right balance.
I can only imagine. Linked, I think, the world of Promise Mascot Agency is considerably larger compared to Paradise Killer. How was it to develop that space this time around, and what were some challenges around populating it?
It had to be a lot bigger because you're in a truck and you can go faster. So that already was a silly idea. And then we decided, well, I don't mean the spoilers to say, but the truck can glide through the world.
Oh, we've shown that.
Yeah, and that was a stupid idea, because all of a sudden you can see stuff from above and be able to land on it. You could kind of do that in PK anyway, but there's a lot of jumping around, but it's just like made everything that much more difficult. And we started off with a bigger world for this, didn't we? And we had to kind of shrink it down. It's kind of like changed as we've developed. Like, we kept it quite loose for a long time, just to try and get like a kind of living white box in it, basically, didn't we? Just because we really had to get the size of it right, because you travel around it a lot, and so we had you tweaked it a lot, didn't you, Oli?
Yeah, so we've been through a lot of iterations, and we started out, the very first version of it was quite a small world, and then we went big. It's always what we do one extreme and then do the other. And one of the things that he wanted to fix after we did the demo with the smaller world was, you never got that feeling of cruising in your car, because we play a lot of GTA Online together as a group, and some of the best times in that are just going for a cruise, seeing what you can see, and going for a drive with like some good music and the sunsets or whatever. And we weren't managing to nail that, so we had to again find that balance between density of content, but also being at like space for vibes. And PK, I made some mistakes with that, with constructing the world, because all the characters in PK are part of the syndicate, the ruling class of the island, and below there is the lower class of citizens, which are all no longer on the island. And it meant that all of the syndicate people were kind of clustered over in one part of the island, and you would go off to other parts of the island to find out some certain story threads, and then you'd always come back to the central part. And it meant that one area was being used way more. Like, narratively it made sense, but from a gameplay point of view, it wasn't that great. But it, on the other hand, it did give you some like extended periods of just exploration, which was cool. But with PMA, we've got a much better balance of that. There are some desolate areas to go and explore and just hang out in, and then there's a good spread of people to speak to all around the island.
Where did the truck come from? Was that always the intention? Straight away you were like, yep, that's the primary method of exploration, or did that come later?
That was one of the first things, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I think, Rach, I think you wanted the K-truck in right away, and why wouldn't you? It's such a cool idea. And that basically that. So, yeah.
I've got to be in an obsession with them, and I've done a portfolio piece, for my art portfolio, and as I was doing it, I was like, oh, this would be cool as a game. So it kind of, it's again like everything we're kind of doing at the time kind of just ends up in the game, I think.
And one of the things that we do as a studio is, I said, like, try to think about what we can do, not what we should do, or like, would be the perfect solution. So like in Paradise Killer, we knew that we wouldn't be able to do 3D characters. So we had just the 2D character, the sprites that sit in the world. And I foolishly thought that just driving around a world in a truck would be easier than doing on foot gameplay, because then you don't have to worry about like jumping and interacting and bolting and like character animations and stuff. And I thought, I'll just bung a truck in and just drive around. How hard can it be? And it has been a nightmare. Our other programmer, Harry, took it on and has done an amazing job with it. And I'm really happy with how it's come out. But like part of that was like, this would just be easier than doing on foot. and it certainly was not.
Part of the problem with that is when you're doing like your first sort of grey box area, it's like, okay, well, there's a truck and it's simple and it moves and it's great. And yeah, we refine it and then you tweak a couple of values and it feels better. But when you start to try and use it, navigating this big world with, rocks you can go over and roads and then these sharp turns, the number of things you have to do to get that feeling good in a real physical world, in an old truck that's also supposed to be nimble, it's really, really tricky. I'm really happy where we got to it. But yeah, it is not an easy thing to achieve.
No. When I started playing it, I was like, oh, this is how you explore. And then I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then you go from, I think it's from the mascot agency down the hill, right? And you go, and I was like, oh, it's a little bit of arcadiness in here. That feels real good, even though it's slow and grounded. So it felt like something that you've tweaked a lot over the course of development.
Yeah, I think we had it. I don't know if we ever put it in. I remember talking about having it like Mario Kart style. It's just stuck to the floor and it flies around. You can never skid. But that's not great. And then we had it where there was no arcadey stuff and it was just very sort of straight on the road and quite old truck. And it gets boring after a while. You need to have some level of mastery. And where it is now, you might get control of the truck and immediately you're like, oh, and you feel like you've not really got control. But after sort of 10 minutes with it, you can figure out and you can master how to take those turns, how to keep boosting around the corner, how to use the mechanics. And that's what we like about it. It's the truck. It's never boring to drive around because there's always that what if this thing's going to happen and suddenly flying. But you're also never out of control, and I really like that.
Yeah, I'm excited to play around with it more when the game comes out. I mean, we have to speak about the mascots. I mean, they're an eclectic bunch of creatures, and although some of them are endearing, I do like how none of them are traditionally cute. I mean, that speaks to what you were saying before, Rachel. What was the design process for creating them? How does a sentient severed thumb spring into being?
Well, it was a big mix, actually. Kinky and Michi were designed by Ikumi Nakamura at the start, and her idea was, play as a Yakuza, but then the mascot he's wandering around with is severed pinky finger, and that's because Yakuza, sometimes when they do something wrong, they cut off the tip of their finger to so that's where that came from. And we always knew that we really wanted to play around with like creepy and cute, as I was saying, and Ikumi Nakamura, like that's her wheelhouse as well. So she sent us a load of kind of like ideas at the start. It was like a kind of mix of just like, ones we found cool, and they all had to fit into like certain dimensions because they all get stuck in the same door. So there's some which are really cool, but they're like long and slender, but we couldn't have that because they're not squishy. And then we kind of just, I designed some, Phil's wife Amy designed some, our concept artist designed some. It was kind of just like, has anyone got any cool ideas? I was just hidden in Slack, like quite a lot. Has anyone got any cool ideas? Like, is anyone? And like someone would just be like, oh yeah, what about, I had like, first of all, I had like sushi last night or something. Can we do something with and it was just, it was kind of quite, I don't know, quite random with it.
It was very freeform. So we just got a big pack of concept art sketches from Ikumi and Mai, and they had a bunch of obviously cultural input that we would never have got to with that, and played on different aspects of Japanese culture. Tofu, one of our main mascots, is a block of tofu who's always crying, and they told us that the reason they designed that was because there's some slang called tofu mental, which is, a derogatory way of talking about someone's mental health problems. And like that, we would never have got to ourselves. It's like that's something someone that only it's on that culture could get to. And it means that we have, some that are like salary nyan is a cat who is a salaryman, a Japanese salaryman, but nyan is the Japanese word for cat, or one of them.
Meow.
And so you get these cool puns, but then you get stuff that is way more like in the weeds culturally, like tofu and some of the others. Like one of them, Kofun, is a mascot based on Japanese burial mounds, and we would probably not have got to that. And then it's a really great, iconic, simple design that works really well.
There was somewhere we were just like, and then we got to like most of the way through our designs, and then we're like, oh God, we haven't actually even got a cute mascot in here. Like, they're all really horrific. And then we were getting feedback saying they're all just really grim. And so we cuted some of them up a bit. And then we made some like Ichigo Love, where it was just like, we're literally going to take a Shiba Inu, strawberries, chocolate, all this nice stuff. Yeah. But then we still couldn't resist him. We're like, well, how can we make this a bit messed up? And then we made him so he got like the deepest voice in the world, and he'd like really hench. And it's just like, he's really funny to speak to. Like, you think he's really cute, and actually he's a total badass. So yeah, it's kind of just like whatever we need in the game, basically. And like Oli said, cultural references, like anything anyone thinks of. It's the whole thing again. If like people come up with ideas, and then we look at them and say, right, which one can we actually put in the game? Which one can we animate? Which one, you know, will kind of appeal to players? Which ones are too obscure? Which ones will go down well? And it just kind of like start off with loads of stuff, and then whittle it down, and then we had our final shortlist. So yeah.
I love that. It unsurprisingly speaks to the creative process you were talking about earlier. And I love that the first pass was they were too cursed. Like, considering where we've ended up, yeah,
there's some real ones in there that will not see the light of day.
Oh, I'd love to see what was on the cutting room floor. So there are some really famous names among the voice cast, and now that we've had a conversation, Rachel, you must have been so excited for Takaya Kuroda, the voice of Kazuma Kiryu from Yakuza.
That was so funny.
How did that happen? How did that come about?
Well, we had some Rofyaku, our Japanese localizer, held some auditions in Tokyo, and apparently he just turned up. Like, they put out a casting call, and he just turned up. So we got all of our voice lines back, and Oli had heard it, but I hadn't. And he leaned back in his chair and he said, "Here, listen to this." So I put my headphones on, and I'm a massive Yakuza fan.
Yeah.
And I was just laughing so much, and I was like, "Oh my God, that's such a good impression! Like, that's really funny." I was like, "Oh, who's this guy? You know, like, we should get him involved. That's really funny." And then Oli said, "No, it's Takaya Kuroda," and I just I think I must have just gone white as a sheet. She couldn't believe it. Because I'm just such a fan of his stuff. But then we had a bit of worry, like, because I'm the warrior in our, and I was like, you know, the stuff I was saying about how we were really worried about being seen as a Yakuza ripoff. I was like, oh gosh, this is going to be like bad. It could be bad. Like, people might really think, you know. But then we heard it and we're like, no, this is amazing. Like, we can't not, like, he's so good as an Ichi. He's done a Hakata dialect from the Fukuoka region in Japan. Like, you know, it's warmer than Kiryu. Like, it's not just Kiryu again, basically. And we just all fell in love. And even the localizer, we said, like, you know, this is, like, he did such a, like, sexy job of it, basically. He said, didn't he? Like, he says you just have to, like, yeah. So that was a really, really, really weird day. But I'm so glad it happened.
Yeah. I can't believe he just showed up. That's so funny.
Well, it shows that his agent is good, because his agent obviously had their ear to the ground, and when they heard casting call for a Yakuza lieutenant in a video game, they were like, they got just the man.
Yeah. Wow, that is such a funny story. So you also have former PlayStation exec Shuei Yoshida and Deadly Premonition creator Swery, which I was particularly excited of. I'm also a huge Deadly Premonition sicko. I even loved The Good Life, the game that was set in effectively the Yorkshire Dales and Lake District. How did those two get involved? Did they also just show up at an open casting call?
So we weren't originally going to do voice acting for the game, but then Kowloon Knights, who funded us, said, you know, we think it would be good. Let's make this happen. And they said it would be good to get some games industry cameos in. So we reached out to Swery, because I love Deadly Premonition and big inspiration for what we do. Again, that released on the 360, but that is essentially a PS2 Hangout game.
It is. When you said PS2 Hangout game, I was like, that is what Deadly Premonition is.
Because it was supposed to be a PS2 game at one point. So he said yes. And what made sense for him is that he plays Kanushi-kun, a ex-delinquent turned priest, and after making Deadly Premonition, Swery went off and got himself ordained as a priest, so he was a good fit for that. And then Shuhei was at dinner with Kowloon, and they were talking about, he'd seen the game, he'd already had it in front of him, and they were talking about the game, and they said, well, why don't you do a voice? And he said yes. And then our localizer Rofyaku used to work with Shuhei on Crash Bandicoot and Jak and Daxter years and years ago. So that was a very easy email for him to write to say, would you like to do this? And then he plays Monoge, who is a Game Center owner mascot in the game.
Yes, I thought that was a very good pick for Shuhei. Oh, wow. That's very fun. I can't wait to hear their full performances when the game comes out.
Oh, they're fantastic. They're not having voice acted before. Rafiaki did a really good job directing them, and Kure-san, who did the recording session, did a really good job of directing them as well. And I think they were put through their paces a bit, and we got good performances out of them. Because that's not something I could do. We relied on them to bring the best out of people, and they did.
Oh, that's really exciting. So, final question. After Promise Mascot Agency launches, what's next for the studio?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll survive.
Yeah, sleep and hope it sells well. But we've started talking about what we'd like to do next. It's still really early days, but we've got some ideas which I'm really excited about. So nothing to say other than if everything goes well, give it a couple of years and something cool will come out.
Nice. Yeah, it's that RTS strategy game.
I think I'm the only one in this company that would love that.
I would quite like to do one, but I don't think it is what real RTS sickos would want. Like I think we could do something really fun when you think about what RTS games, like the broad spectrum of what an RTS game is. Like there's like Pikmin at one end, and then there's competitive StarCraft at the other, and I think there is something that we could do there, but I'm not sure that we are in a position to be able to tackle that properly.
Well, the seed's being planted. Let's see what happens.
Well, at least actually, we're about to say goodbye to the Switch, and so we'll never have to ship a game on the Switch again. So the world is our oyster now that we don't have to get a game at 30 frames a second on the Switch.
Well, we haven't seen the Switch 2 yet, so let's see what... Before we end, we always like to end with a section we call Hyperfixations, where we ask our guests just something that's on their mind. We've had some really interesting responses over the years. When we spoke to Zalavia Nelson Jr. from Strange Scaffold, his hyperfixation was like the concept of making a home, whereas most of my hyperfixations on regular episodes are like, I read a book and it was quite good, I think. So yeah, anything that's just currently on your mind. Rachel, I know when I emailed you about this, you said you were quite excited about this, so maybe you could go first.
Well, I feel really bad now because that was really deep. And all I was going to say is I'm absolutely obsessed with the TV show Severance.
No, I love that. Great answer. No, honestly, yeah.
I
fantastic
think about
answer.
it all the time. I look at memes all the time. I theorize about what's going on in that world all the time. I don't know, like, if many, I guess loads of people are watching it, it's quite big now, but it's kind of like you don't really know what's going on. Like we're in season 2 and we still don't know like what's going on. It's it brings me like, I was like really obsessed with The Matrix, like the film, like from when it came out, like from a young teenager to now. Like, I've probably watched it hundreds of times. It's just like that is one of my other hyperfixations, and I like this is like the first thing that I've seen since The Matrix that's given me that feeling of like. The world is off kilter, and we love that kind of stuff in our games as well. Like the world is not quite right. Like what is going on, and you feel like you're there with them. Like the character doesn't know what's going on. Like they're trying to figure it out, and you're trying to figure it out with them. I love that stuff so much. So that's what I was going to say. It's not that deep, but
that's great.
Absolutely obsessed, and yeah, just can't like every week. We watch on a Saturday. Every Saturday, I'm just so excited, and it's been a long time since the TV show's done that to me. So that's my boring answer, I'm afraid.
It's not boring at all. I completely agree. I'm right there with you. Me and my partner are obsessed with it.
Oh,
so yeah, Severance RTS game. That's what. That's
what
we're happening next. Phil, do you have a hyperfixation?
Yeah. So just before Christmas, I started doing karate again, and that's something I used to do like 20 something years ago. And I just decided to pick it back up, and it's on my mind all the time. And it's great because I mean, I need to get fitter, and that's good. But I forgot how much I just enjoy the process of sort of, trying to control the body and just improving this little thing over and over again. And for a difficult time, like running up to release of a game, it's a difficult time mentally. And as soon as I went that first lesson, something just clicked and go, this is how I stay sane. And I love it. Every time I go, I come back, I just feel much better about life. And I feel like I'm working towards something again that isn't, making a game or doing something that's just for me that I really, really enjoy.
That's great. I'm really pleased to hear that you're getting so much out of it. And to pick that up after 20 years as well, like no small feat. That's awesome.
My body hurts constantly in about 2 months. Today, my shoulder barely moves. And but it's that it just feels, I know I'm doing it for a reason. And I know it's going to be hard, but I can't. Yeah, I'm just excited to go back every time. Really enjoy it.
That's great. Oh, good for you. What about you, Oli?
Well, I'm slightly frustrated that you mentioned Xalavier, because I always, whenever I see him, I'm always like, that is an intelligent designer. I should be more like him and have more intelligent things to say. So I'm really looking forward to playing the demo for the new Fatal Fury game later this evening. That's all.
It's a good answer. Xalavier, he went to the other end of the spectrum that we've never hit on our episodes. So, tell me more about the demo. Why are you excited about it?
I've been getting into SNK fighters recently, and because I grew up playing Street Fighter, and I want to know what these SNK games are all about, like King of Fighters and Samurai Showdown, and so this is the sequel to Garo. Garo came out in the 90s, so it's years and years since there was one, and that's held up as one of the best fighting games. So they're running an open beta for the new one. I think might be going up tonight, depending on where you are in the world, and it's got my two favorite SNK characters in. So I'm gonna have a good time. I was watching battle system explain. It's a very complex fighter, and I can't keep up with it. I'm not good enough to do that, but I love systems in games and understanding what is in a game, even if I cannot achieve it. So I'm really looking forward to that.
That's rad. I didn't even know that was coming out. That's really cool. Those are 3 great hyperfixations. I shouldn't give the Xalavier example because it always makes people be like, oh God.
In my career, I've been told by people higher ranked than me in jobs that I'm too gamey and that I care about games too much. And fair enough. Maybe I don't have a broad enough spectrum of interests. But so I keep thinking, like, every time I get comfortable with that and feeling like, it's okay, that's who I am. And then I see another designer who is, more philosophical, more intelligent, more world or something. I'm, God damn it, maybe I should be more like that. Now, here we are.
Right. Did not want to give you a full existential crisis at the end of this interview. I think it's great that you're gamey, Oli, and your interests are your interests, and you should love them and accept them for what they are. I'm definitely never mentioning that Xalavier thing ever again. To be fair, like, it was great talking to him, but yeah, I was like, I am the dumbest man on the planet. Like, everything you're saying is fantastic. People listen to that and they're like, Liam, great interview. You smashed it. I'm like, I said 5 things and he said a lot of intelligent things. Thank you for giving me the praise, but I did nothing. I just hit record and published it for the people to listen to. Well, thank you to the 3 of you for joining us. It's been so fantastic to talk to you all. And I am so excited for Promise Mascot Agency. I'm sure when that drops, it's going to make a splash. So good luck with the rest of development. I know that you're right in the midst of it right now. Good luck, and can't wait to see it to when it comes out.
Thank you very much for having us. It's been lovely.
Thank you.
Indieventure is a video games podcast created, produced, hosted, and edited by Rachel Watts, Rebecca Jones, and me, Liam Richardson. For more information, including a list of every game we mentioned in this episode, make sure to check out our website, indieventurepodcast.co.uk. You can get in touch by sending your questions, comments, and feedback to contact@indieventurepodcast.co.uk. You can support the show by rating us 5 stars and leaving a review on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast provider of choice. Some of the games we talk about on the show may have been provided to us for free for review consideration. Our intro music and stings were composed for us by Ollie Newbury. Check the episode description to hear more of his excellent tunes. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks for another episode of Indieventure. Bye for now.